Cyberpunk 2077, one of the most anticipated games of recent years that had a development time of over 8 years, has been mostly disappointing so far. I, Hepodix, and my brother jumped on the hype wagon to see how the game is, and it turns out that the launch of Cyberpunk as well as the current state of the game is in really bad state right now. But before we begin, I'd like to state that the idea of Cyberpunk 2077 is great, the game has great visuals, soundtrack, as well as the storytelling and characters are all good. However, there are a lot of problems right now, and that's what this video is all about. I usually do top 10 videos on this channel, but for this case I wanted to do a little exception and talk about the issues at hand, so let's begin. First, we have the terrible launch of Cyberpunk 2077. The first minutes of the launch is when we stepped in. While it downloaded fine for the most part, it got stuck towards the end and we weren't able to finish downloading. It took a mere hour to complete downloading the game, so it was actually 1 hour after the launch, Cyberpunk was able to launch and we got ourselves in. And to top things off, the game was pre-downloaded before the launch and we still had to wait for an hour to get in. Also, for some reason, the CPU of the PC started acting weird during the download phase. The CPU usage just went up to 100% to 10% and back to 100% at short time intervals, which isn't normal. I mean, downloading games should be using like a benchmark tool, but the CPU still made a ton of noise and that isn't just normal behavior. I understand also that the game launches can be hectic, especially if the game is popular, but if the developers knew that there's going to be a ton of traffic coming in at a certain hour, why they did not invest more in the server bandwidth? Or is this a flaw from Steam's side? I am not sure, but the whole Steam store and overall performance was just really crappy and we weren't happy about this at all.
Hey, watch it.
Next, we have the questionable performance of the game. We played this game on PC, where we get to soon, but first, quick note regarding the console versions, the PS4 and Xbox One. The console versions seems to be doomed from the start, as they run on 20 to 30 FPS constantly, and that is a huge issue. Especially if you play Cyberpunk with the original PS4 or Xbox One and not on the Pro versions, it is pretty much a train wreck. According to Reddit user NotBen2, Sony themselves have been issuing refunds for Cyberpunk 2077, which is just saying that the game has been launched in an unfinished state. And to add salt to the injury, the game was already postponed on several occasions, so the question is that why they didn't delay the game even further to get a stable release on launch instead of releasing a buggy mess. Maybe the pressure was onto them after delaying it so many times already, and they just needed to get it out. Who knows? Maybe they will release a statement at some point in time and explain themselves. And yes, there was an apology statement recently, which is a good thing that they are aware of the issues, but that statement didn't answer the question about why they did not delay the game further if they knew Cyberpunk was in an unfinished state. But now I also need to mention about the PC version, because as long as you have good enough components in, it should run fine, right? No, of course not. The performance overall is better in PCs than in consoles, but when you look at the recommended specs and try to run them with the appropriate hardware, they do not seem to match that well. So the conclusion I can draw from this is that whether it is the PC or the console version of Cyberpunk, there has to be bugs or performance issues that causes the game run on lower than average frame rates, and that is not a good sign at all. Next, we have the glitches of Cyberpunk, and there seems to be a lot of them right now. These are some of the glitches we and other people experienced during the playtime, such as NPCs getting stuck on T-poses, which looks hilarious. Enemies can get stuck in places, characters flying out in the air, cars' physics acting strangely as they get stuck on places. You can even get stuck in the scanning mode as you could not exit, thus making it unplayable, as you have to load or restart the whole game in order to proceed. Weapons like sniper rifles get stuck, you can't shoot with them nor reload despite having bullets left. Also, the crime system doesn't seem to be implemented well enough, meaning that no matter how bad the deeds have you done, as long as you can find a vehicle, you can always chase cops away, as well as the AI of the cops are weird, as they might just teleport next to you. There's also that if you try to approach the missions by sneaking, it doesn't seem to matter as the NPCs can see you through walls, and that really kills the idea of trying to play sneakily. So with everything said here, it is time to draw a line and come up with a conclusion on the current state of Cyberpunk 2077. It is honestly in a very unreleased state, and you can break the immersion easily, and therefore the game is not enjoyable to play within some circumstances. At the current price tag of $60, it's not worth it in my opinion. And we really hope the game gets better after the developers will fix these major bugs and issues. This is just sad to see when a game that's been so hyped and delayed so many times still gets released on such a bad state. And like I mentioned before, the concept of Cyberpunk is really great and there are good elements put into it, but with these issues at hand, it's not worth a purchase at this state and thus cannot recommend buying it for the full price. Let me know in the comments what are your experiences and thoughts of the current state of Cyberpunk, and with that said, thanks for watching, my name is Hepodix and have a nice day.